Hi, moms and dads. How are you? Happy Tuesday. This is Monica here with the best interest of the parent. And I know that in the Facebook group, we have probably 20 new members, which is incredible. And I really, truly believe that it's because we're having a guest tonight, which is exciting, and a guest who actually knows what she's talking about, all things parental alienation. So we're super excited to have Summer O'Brien on. And I just want to make sure she could hop on. Let's see. She got my invite. Okay. All right, she's going to be coming on in 2 seconds. But for those of you who are brand new to my group, The Best Interest of the Parent, you're probably here because you are aware of the agonizing psychological trauma that family court can bring into your life when you have all these things at risk here, you know, your children, your dignity, your assets, your whole life. And so the result of family court, when you have bad orders, can really, be a disaster on your life. And so we could go one of two ways. We could become victims, or we could become activists. And I want parents to become activists, because that is the only way the system is going to be taken down, is the fourth branch of government, which is the people, not the executive branch, not the legislative branch, not some judge, not an attorney. It's going to be the consumers of the services in family court. I believe that it's going to be the consumers that it's going to be taking care of this problem. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then you're going to want to be a part of all this. So Summer's coming on right now. Oh, you're adorable. Yeah. I like summer sweaters. Well, your name's Summer, but I like sweaters in summer as well.
Yeah, it's a little chilly today. How are you, Monica? Nice to virtually meet you.
Yeah, I'm a little dressed down, but yeah. So we're here. Excellent. So I just gave a brief intro about me, but do you want to, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you want to just fill in our audience here all about you and like what got you into being a paralegal, which you are? Was it your experience with the system, or were you already a paralegal prior? And then you, yeah. So how did you get into this?
Yeah, so law has always been a passion of mine. I actually hold a criminal justice degree also that I went and received in my early 20s. I wanted to be a police officer and follow in some family footsteps. However, that didn't work out for the better, I think, nowadays. I'm grateful that didn't work out and led me down the other legal administrative path, which is paralegal. And, I did that in order to be as close as I could to the law without sacrificing, 6 figures of student debt, as a lot of attorneys do. And so, through that path, I've been able to meet a lot of attorneys. I've been able to work for a couple of them. I've met some great people through the courts and not so great people through the courts. You get to know the actors, you get to know the players and who's there and who does what. And really right now, what the paralegal focus is with my business is advocating for pro se defendants. I want to make sure that they have resources that they need without providing legal advice. So I work in that kind of arena a little bit. And I also, once in a while do some contract work still for private attorneys that, need to lessen their workload.
Yeah, paralegal is a very important field, and I mean, from what I've heard, it's becoming more and more necessary for lawyers to deal with the issues they don't want to necessarily manage. You could probably do it more efficiently than they can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much I want to unpack here with all this. So today, I know that parental alienation is one of your passions. And I know that you have some personal experience with this particular thing. Would you mind sharing with the group?
Yeah, no problem. I think the more awareness we get out there, even if it's the littlest thing, is important. And if we continue to have open discussions and communications about what we're all going through, I think at the end of the day, all the dots will connect. And, some people may start healing from what others have gone through and things like that. I've been, I wouldn't say lucky, but I know it could be worse in the situation of any kind of mental, emotional abuse with children involved. I would say on a scale from 1 to 10, in both with my biological kids and with my stepkids. You know, my biological kids being, you know, again, scale 1 to 10, 1 being like perfect, everybody co-parents, everybody's happy, no problems, and 10 being like, I don't see them. I would say they're probably like a 3, you know, a 3 or 4, my biological children. My stepchildren, on the other hand, I would probably rate them more at like a 6 right now. You know, just kind of getting closer to the 10 spot. You know, we worry every day if this is the last time we're going to see them. You know,
I know the feeling.
Yeah, it's really hard to live in that moment when you don't know, like you're not guaranteed the next visit with them.
It's like having elderly grandparents. Every time I see my grandparents, I get on the, you know, they're in Minnesota, so I'll get on the plane and I'm crying the entire way home because I'm like, I'm never going to see them again. And
yeah,
it's
very uncertain.
But yours, you know, that's more natural. That's kind of an expected life cycle thing.
Right.
Do you mind if I ask the ages of all 4 kids?
Yeah, no. So my biological children, I have a senior, he's 17. He's graduating this year. I have a just entering 8th grade, she's 12. I have my 2 stepchildren are also 12, and the littlest one is 7.
12 and 7. Okay. So are you finding this in the 7-year-old?
Not so much. I've been in her life since she was 3, just turned 3. So in regards to, you know, thinking negatively about me, it's going to be harder because her earliest memories are of me.
Yeah.
So it would be I guess there'd have to be a very strong campaign, a very blatant campaign against her father or myself in order for that to start being apparent. You know, the 12-year-old, my 12-year-old stepson, on the other hand, you know, he was, I would have to say he was like 9.5, 10 when it really started to be noticeable, when his personality started changing. And, you know, I even factored in puberty, right? Like, okay, you know, you're going through changes. I understand, you know,
there's like a curve.
So I gave him the bell, you know, I gave him the bell curve, you know, but then, you know, really we started seeing things, name calling, mocking, referring to the parental authorities in the house by their first name, you know, lying, deceit, sneaky, you know, all these things started coming into play. And, you know, again, we're sitting there and it almost hits you like a brick wall. You know, you wouldn't think in 100 years that this could be coming from a third party. So you sit there and you try to talk to them, and you try to understand. At the end of the day, they, you know, they just go right back. They go right back. Came out of. So it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing all the time here.
Is there equal custody? Is there equal parenting time with both parents?
No. So they had equal parenting until they went to court, which is our favorite expression of all time. We had, you know, we use that a lot in in our circles of shared 50-50 custody. You know, oh, I had 50-50 custody until I went to court. That's very common. So multiple petitions later, and he was sanctioned to the every other weekend dad in some dinner nights throughout the month. So he was given the standard here in New York. That's standard. That's pretty much, you know, it's about 20 to 30% of the time, the parenting time is what we see. So he was given that, and then we have 50-50 custody of them in the summer months, which is a godsend. I love that time.
Yeah. I mean, I have 14% of the time with my son. I don't know how I came up with that. I must have calculated it a long time ago, but I get him 4 hours once a week and then every other weekend. And it's been like this for 11 years. So I definitely feared the alienation. You know, why wouldn't he be alienated? Look how much time I have with him. How much influence do I have over him?
Right.
Yeah.
It really, sorry to cut you off. It really takes, I've talked about this a couple of times with other people. It really takes time. And when I say time, I don't mean like over a span of time. I mean, that day, that moment, it takes time to cultivate those organic interactions that parents and children need to form those attachments. So, you know, when you only see your child 4 hours a week, or you only see them once every 10, 12 days, getting across that built between the kids. You know, you're not getting the hugs off the school bus. You're not getting the helping with homework. You're not getting, I had a bad day. Can you help me? You're not getting bath times and meal time. You know, so you're missing on all these opportunities to form that attachment, which I know Dr. Childress talks a lot about, is that those attachments that parents and children have.
Yeah.
And how important they are.
And it's very real because, like I said, I've been parenting my son 4 days a month since he was 3. And like, I don't remember the last time I parented my son when he was sick, right. We're not together enough where we even fight. And you know, actually, that's actually changing. We fight a lot now, but it kind of feels good because I feel like a normal parent now, you know. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, for me, I refuse to embody the visitor parent mindset where I was afraid to set boundaries. I know a lot of parents struggle with that, where they don't want to like parent, they want to like, but you know, but you're right. Like I'm basically my son's aunt. Right. That's what I tell people. I'm like, I'm his aunt. And it's I kind of say that sarcastically and to try to poke fun at the atrocity of what happened. And yeah, and I think equal custody is a huge insulator for alienation. And we all know that. And like, I've always said that the best way to prevent alienation is equal custody. And then even if there's a situation where your ex is being a jerk and doesn't want to bring the child, because so for me, like my parenting time would easily go from 14% to like 7% just by missing one weekend, you know? And right. So like my ex was constantly withholding my son on a weekend. And so this was a long stretch of time where I would just randomly not get my birthday with him, or not get Mother's Day, or not get an entire weekend, or not. For the longest time, I literally missed every single April vacation. I mean, it was literally like three April vacations in a row. And so your time gets like exponentially smaller when you miss one parenting experience. And so I always said, like, you know, equal custody, even if the other parent wants to be a jerk and say, well, no, they don't want to see you this weekend, or they have a soccer game, or, you know, I'm going to my aunt's house or something, and they withhold the child, it's not going to dent the relationship that much if you already have equal time with your child. So yeah, equal custody is an insulator of alienation, in my opinion. And also you get to like offset the brainwashing when you're constantly re-exposed to the health of your parent over and over again.
Yeah. That's what they say. You know, that's what a lot of experts say, is the more influence that I would say the healthier parent has over the children, the quicker the kids are resilient. You know, they really are. So the more they're influenced with a positive relationship or a healthier parent, they're going to start picking up on that. And they're going to start thinking to themselves as they mature and as they get older, you know, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. Or, oh, this is healthy. You know, we want to set them up and give them tools to navigate their life. And if they're only learning deceit and lying and mistrust and guilt and sadness, even if it's just subconsciously, I mean, that's where the cycle comes in, where you just continually have this, like, you know, multi-generational cycle of narcissists and people that use other people to gain what they want. And I don't think anybody wants that for their child.
Yeah, it's so funny. when I started this live stream, it was still daylight, and now it's night. So I'm just going to turn my lights on because I'm like, wow, I'm getting really dark. Man. Looks like I have a TV.
I thought of the same thing when I started, so I turned my light on before. Like, it's going to be dark.
All right. Yeah. So, can I ask about? I'm curious about your nonprofit, New York Families for Tomorrow. Yeah. What kind of work do you do there? I'm going to be plugging. I already plugged in your Facebook page.
Oh, thank you. Mm-hmm. So this is a new nonprofit. We literally just filed articles of incorporation like a couple weeks ago. What it is, it's a coalition of multiple national groups that we came together here in New York. Each chair body came together in New York and formed a group. And the group was kind of, it was getting places, but we thought a stronger presence, a more formal presence would be appropriate. So we incorporated to be a nonprofit. And our sole purpose and our mission is to get, 50-50 presumptuous shared custody.
Wow.
In New York State. If you know anything about New York State, you know that it's a political nightmare to try to get anything accomplished here. We really spend a lot of time, our leadership really spends a lot of time focusing on our senators and assemblymen, who they are, what they do, what they like, what they go for, what they push, what they don't. We really take the time to study everyone. So when we come to the table and discussions of the bills that we may help draft or we may help, promote, then we have a good idea of where to go with it. So that's our main focus, is we want 50-50 shared custody at the beginning, from separation, from divorce, from the beginning. There are thousands and thousands of stories in New York, and I'm sure in Connecticut, that's where you are, right?
Yeah.
And everywhere, of mom and dad are getting a divorce. Mom or dad took the kids. Divorce takes 6 months to 15 months. And you're not seeing your children during the most struggling, stressful time for your whole family. It's not just you and it's not just them. It's your whole family going through this transition, and you don't get to be together.
Yeah, I have a client whose wife filed October of 2019, and he still hasn't seen his kids. And because of COVID, they literally just quit. They closed court basically.
Yeah.
And he has no parenting schedule. He has nothing. He can't see his kids. And interestingly, one thing I see that I could see how the problems are inserted so early on to create like a what's that word I'm looking for? What's that word called when you get money for a long time? Annuity. Like, when I see like parents getting a divorce, I listen. I'm so nosy and I have a big mouth, so it's like an interesting combination. In court, I listen in on other people's conversations, and I hear attorneys talking to the parent, like, "Oh, just agree to every other weekend, make things easy. Don't make it hard on the judge. Don't make it hard on the ex. You could always go back for 50-50 in 6 months when you could prove that you can parent equally, or when you could prove that you could parent every other weekend." So this parent is being pushed to prove their worth as a parent when they never had to do that when the child was born out of the hospital. The parent never had to prove their worth when the kid was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. Now that mommy and daddy don't like each other anymore, now the parent has something to prove. And so, so they have to like jump through hoops, and then they have to file a motion to modify in 6 months, according to the attorney, because by then the attorney's long gone,
Yeah.
And the parent has to hire a GAL and get therapists for the child and therapists for the parents, and then co-parenting therapy, co-parenting coordinator. And so, and then you're in the system forever. Like I was pushed into every other weekend in 2010, and here I am. I didn't agree to it though. I did demand a trial. I lost everything. So I went back, lost again, got my parenting time cut in half when I went back for a modification. And that, I believe that
it's almost like a punishment for you to continue to insert your rights.
the judge actually said that. She said that I'm volatile, I'm combative, I can't just accept what I have. I make things difficult. I'm hurting my child by going to court to litigate. All that stuff. And so, and then like in between those trials, you're like in co-parenting therapy, and then you have to hire a GAL. And then I find that parents will take like a 2-year hiatus where they're working on themselves. Let me get a better job. Let me landscape my garden. Let me, get married. Let me get divorced from my new partner. Like, so they feel like they have to shape their lives. And I call them, building the mommy and daddy resume. And again, these are things that they didn't have to do when they were conceiving the child. Nobody put them through a series of tests to conceive a child and to bring a child home from the hospital. When and if anything, you're less capable in the very beginning stages than you are when your ex doesn't like you anymore.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can imagine I am 50 times more the parent than I was when I first brought my child home. I mean, I was 19 when I had my first child, and I had no clue. But what I did know early on is that he's not just mine. He doesn't just belong to me as one person. His father, I always recognized his father as the other part of this being. And I would never, right early on, I would never diminish that respect that I want more parents to show to their children and to show them, you are this person. Let's stop diminishing parts of children because you don't like where they came from. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. And, I'm an alienated child. I testified against my dad, in chambers when I was 4, just so crazy. So I'm 42 now. I called my mom 4 days ago, and I never talked to my mom. She's narcissistic, and she was telling me again what it was like to be married to my dad in like 1977. And so I'm still being not alienated. So there's different terms. So what's happening now, she's not alienating me now, right? Because I'm 42 and I love my dad to death. So like, that's not alienating. It's even though she's bashing him to me as an adult child, as if I'm going to change my mind about my dad at this point. Right. That's not alienating. It's only alienation when I become brainwashed.
Right. Well, and I think also when you're still reliant on that attachment with your mother. So if you were, regardless of age, if you're still relying on that attachment aspect for something, I feel that's when you're still alienated. So that could be 5, it could be 13, it could be 20, it could be 30. I mean, depending on the intellect and the maturity of the person, if they're still attached to that person and they need that attachment to survive, they're still being alienated.
Oh my gosh. I cannot believe I've never, ever, ever, ever thought of it that way. I have a 40-year-old sister who's alienated. Like, she doesn't talk to my dad at all. And she thinks my dad's like a pervert and like a misogynist and all these things. And my dad's like none of those things. But so yeah, you could be alienated at 40.
Yeah. She must be getting something from that attachment bond with your mom.
Yeah.
She must be getting, energy. She could have the narcissistic traits also, which will in turn, they'll feed off each other.
Yes.
Right. That's what we deal with in our house. We have a ex-wife and her mother, and they're like yin and yang all the time, and they're constantly feeding off each other and constantly bouncing off each other. And unfortunately, the kids are in the middle, or we're in the middle. Anybody but them are in the middle of their back and forth banter of their needs and wants in life.
Yeah. That's very interesting. So so if you don't have much of a sense of self, that makes perfect sense. I never looked at it that way. I just, but it's just, I think I'm different than most kids. I remember being 4 years old, and I remember thinking, I'm lying right now. I'm not telling the truth. I remember consciously lying about my father because that's what the adults wanted me to say. But I was never actually alienated. I never believed what I was saying. I was just narrating what I had to say just to make everybody happy.
Right. So you were blessed with a strong soul. You had that strength early on to pick that up. We had, for example, my 7-year-old stepdaughter. We had a couple years where lying was the thing. It'd be as simple as, oh, did you eat that cookie off the table? No. Okay, I saw you. No, you didn't. Or, hey, did your mom pick you up from school today? Yeah, she did. No, she didn't. It was constantly. So we were trying to, figure out, that's the thing with kids. You have to figure out, are they lying to protect something and they know they're lying, or are they lying because that's what their truth is?
That's a good question, because I don't know. We have a 19-year-old stepson who's going to be 20 in a couple weeks. Never met his two younger sisters. Our daughters are 5 and 3, and their oldest brother has never met them. And he stopped coming the day he found out I was pregnant with my older daughter, and that was in 2015. And he was 14 at the time, and there was nothing we could do to get him in the car to come see us. And he lives 2 miles away. Occasionally we'll see him at the store, but he's never met his sisters. But I don't know if he believes what he's saying. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
It's so difficult. That I think that's the hardest part too. Like, at least for me, is the unknown. Like,
yeah,
it's very difficult to deal with on a daily basis, the unknowns of what's going on. And it's that lack of control, right? Like, oh, I don't have control over this. So what do you do with that?
Yeah. And one thing I want to point out is, I don't know if you're familiar with Friendlies. Did they have Friendlies in New York?
We did. I think they all went out of business though.
Yeah. So in 1987, my mom took me to a Friendlies, and I walked in, I saw my dad sitting at the booth, and I hadn't seen him in 5 years. And I was like, oh, and I felt shy for about 20 minutes, but there was I felt so safe. Like, I felt like a completion sitting there, so my mom sat next to me, and then my dad sat across from my mom. So my dad was like diagonal to me, and I just felt so like safe, and like, I felt like there was just like a tremendous calm that came over me. My dad and I talk about this all the time now, like, and so it's just kind of funny how it does backfire for a percentage of people. But it's just interesting. Like, my sister's 100% brainwashed, and I'm not. Like, I know my mom's a narcissist. Like, it's I'm not even mad about it. I just know factually that she's a narcissist. So I have grace. Like, I have compassion for my mom, because I feel like, she probably just has bad wiring. Her mother is a narcissist.
Right.
And I see it in my grandmother too. My grandmother's 87 years old. I'm like, yeah, you're a narcissist, Yeah. I love my grandma to death. That's what's so funny. My grandma taught me how to sew. She taught me how to cook, but she's a narcissist. But it's just funny how we have these like twisted bonds with people, like how you can love someone so much and know that they're a narcissist,
Well, that goes to show you that should say, when a child doesn't naturally love or show compassion towards their own parent, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Right? If we can love, there's people out there who write and marry murderers in prison, and we love all of our family members, as crazy or as mental, unstable as they are, and we still talk to them, and we still communicate, and we still, banter, and we invite them to things. So when a child comes along and they're like, oh, I don't love you anymore, I don't want to see you anymore, that should be like, to anybody, a judge, a lawyer, that should be immediate stop the train. What's going on? We need to talk about this and see what's happening.
Yeah. And like, I came from such an abusive home, and like, when Child Protective Services would interview me, I always covered up for my abusive parents. I never ever told on my parents. So, but again, like, there's a mom that lives a block away from me who had twin daughters that were legitimately being abused by the other parent. He was substantiated by CPS for abuse. Like, he was the abuser. Like, there's not even a question. And the family court judge put all the kids with dad full time, and mom got, I think, supervised visits for reporting the abuse. And she literally lives like a block away from where I'm sitting right now. And the kids would run away from home and hitchhike and, you know, spend time with mom. And then she actually spent three months in jail for withholding the kids, or for sheltering them when they came to her on Christmas Eve in a snowstorm. She let them in her home. You know, my 12-year-old's knocking on my door Christmas Eve in the middle of a snowstorm. I say, "Oh, here, honey, here's some shelter. Here's a warm blanket." So she went to jail for that for 3 months. And so we have judges that are falsely, and so the judge said the mom was alienating the kids against the father, and that's why the mom had no custody. She had supervised visits, and that's why she spent time in jail for interfering with dad's custody by giving her kids shelter. If she had left them in the street, she'd be fine.
I don't get it. I don't get it. We had, you know, you can call the police, you know, your ex can take the kids. You can have an order that says it's Tuesday. I get my kids on Tuesday. And your ex can take them and not give them to you on Tuesday. And you can call the police and say, "Hey, it's Tuesday. I'm supposed to have my kids, but I don't." And they do absolutely nothing about it. Zero.
Unless you're the second class parent. So if I don't bring I'm the second class parent. So if I don't bring my son back, the cops will come after me, you know? And so what's really funny, and this is actually kind of tragic. Yeah. So it was actually my husband that passed the law that allows cops to enforce a custody order. So my husband got this law passed where if you withhold the children, you could get hit with a misdemeanor. And guess what? The cops are only applying it to the non-custodial parent.
Right.
Yeah, they will not do it to so my husband was actually arrested in broad daylight, Columbus Day 2017, in front of his sons, for withholding our son on Columbus Day because it was a long weekend. And it's the order said something like if it's a holiday weekend, the parent gets the extra day. But the mom decided Columbus Day is not a federal holiday because she didn't believe in Christopher Columbus. She thought he was a massacre guy. Or, you know, so because she had an opinion about Columbus Day, my husband was arrested in broad daylight at a bank in our town in front of people that I was running for office at the time, so that was interesting. And so he got arrested on a law that he helped pass. But that is just the classic way to get back at a parent for being an activist in the system.
Oh, absolutely. So. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like they show you, but they would never arrest the first class parent.
No,
you know?
we follow our orders to the T. I actually wrote the order that is enforceable right now. She doesn't know. You'd probably have a feel, you know, fall off her chair if she knew that she was, you know, following something that I wrote. But you know, so we follow everything to a T because at the end of the day, you know, he's the non-custodial parent and I need to make sure everything is to the letter of the law because that's how I protect my family is we follow to the letter of the law and you document. You get, and then you also get third-party help. You get the counseling, you talk to the school counselors, you bring more family in and without the other parent knowing any of it. You know, that's always been my belief is you handle your family when they're in your house, that's your family.
Oh yeah. I think that whole thing where I need the other parent's permission to do whatever. No, you do what you want in your house and the other parent does what they want in their house. And I have no problem with my ex doing anything he wants with my son. If he gets him into therapy, fine. If he thinks he needs therapy, he's got the right. And the reason I don't put up a fuss, and parents will, people are going to start unfollowing me. Like I could actually hear the unfollow button right now in my head. Like, oh, she's saying it's okay for my ex to single-handedly take my kid to therapy. The reason I'm okay with that is because I'm married. My husband right now could be taking one of our kids to anything, and there's nothing I could do because we're married. So if there's no protection inside a marriage for one parent to single-handedly take the child to do something, then why should there be all this extra protection in a divorce? Why do divorced people get special treatment? I'm actually kind of going against the grain by saying that divorced people.
You're absolutely right. Fair is fair. That's what I always say. Fair is fair.
My husband, I swear to God, my husband came home 4 months ago with my 2-year-old. And she was missing. He took her to the dentist. He brought her home. She had a missing tooth. I said, "What the fuck just happened to this?" Like I freaked out, right? I thought, and then afterwards I was kind of laughing about it because I was like, if we were divorced, like, and this happened, this would be a battle, court battle. But because we're married, like, no one's going to care. People are going to go, shut up, quit your whining.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Like, what are you going to say to that?
My husband took our daughter to the dentist. So yeah, so and so I'm different. Like, I'm also a libertarian, so I don't want the state in my life at all, even if I have an ex that doesn't like me. And so I feel like, I mean, and this is another limb I'm going to go out on. And I could hear that unsubscribe button clicking right now. If maybe you can answer this. Is it really any of my business if my ex badmouths me to my son if I already have all my rights protected by the state? Like, in other words, the state's not forcing me into an every other weekend parenting. The state hasn't diminished my rights in any capacity, because married parents can alienate kids too. And if we're going to punish people for alienation, it should be universal. It should be codified in child abuse laws instead of this whole conditional, like, well, you're divorced, therefore it's alienation. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too, like, libertarian with all this. What do you think?
No, I mean, I can remember my parents are both still together. They've been together 33 years, something like that. And I can remember growing up, I'd hear my mom all the time right there, your dad's such an asshole, and your dad's this, and your dad's that. Okay, like, still today it happened. And, like, as an adult, do I think he's an asshole because she said so? No. I may have my opinions about him because of our own life experiences, but, like, it didn't diminish what I thought of my dad. I just thought it was normal spouse banter.
What's your nationality?
I'm Irish. So it's like, okay.
Oh my God, that's so fun. I want to go to your house for dinner and just listen to your parents.
That was about 8 sessions of therapy I went to for all that. But anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God.
But that's, I follow what you're saying in this whole special treatment of divorced people, right? So because you're divorced, I can't call your mom a bitch when she's acting like a bitch, or your dad a jerk when he's acting like a jerk. Like, I can't do that. Why? Mm-hmm. I really don't think bad mouthing is one of the biggest points of alienation.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it makes you an a-hole to act that way.
Oh, sure.
I mean,
I think it's down on the list. I think it's down on the list ahead of, false memories, independent thinker syndrome, any kind of, like, mental withholding, or custodial interference. Like, I think bad mouthing is down here on the list of things that contribute to alienating behavior.
Yeah. I have a client who hasn't seen his son in a very long time, not because of withholding. Well, it is withholding, but there's no court order. That's a problem. There's no court order. Therefore, the wife's like, well, I don't have to follow anything. There's no orders because COVID has delayed their divorce by so long. They're still legally married. There's no protection. Their divorce is being postponed, like, forever. And in fact, they actually buried his docket. Like, they just won't put, and that's one of the freaking most mafia tactics in family court in Connecticut anyway, is simply not docketing something. So my husband will file a motion and they just simply won't do anything with it. They won't even put it on the calendar. So you can't get relief. So in this case, he's been filing, he's not even divorced. He's been filing for a parenting plan and they're not calendaring his stuff at all. And so he hasn't seen his son in about, 19 months or something. So he's trying to hire, like, a psychologist to evaluate the son to find out if he's alienated. So I was like, well, why don't you just channel your energies into finding out why the hell the court system's not giving you a court date in compliance with your First Amendment rights to petition the government to redress grievances, instead of being like, well, let me get an evaluation for my son, which could take months. And then the evaluator has to write the report, and then you have to go to court and get the report written. There's just so much involved. And I feel like parents are like, they don't know what to do. They don't know what they're navigating. I think we should stick with, like, freaking allowing parents to keep what they already have, which is parental rights. I've said in open court, I still have rights to my son, even if this person doesn't like me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's a lot of, in our advocacy here in New York, we talk to a lot of parents, a lot of that are going through the divorce, going through the process. And our number one concern is always getting them with their kids first.
Yes.
So, I'll tell people all the time, hey, and I'm very honest. I say, hey, you're kind of veering off the path, the end goal of getting to be with your kids. And like you said, preventing that wedge, that's I feel almost naturally is coming the longer you are without your children.
Yeah, and parents are very gung-ho about proving alienation in court. So
yes.
Why not, why not secure your time with your child, and then
Yes.
if you want to manage the alienation, go off on your own and do therapy. You don't have to go to the government to have the government oversee your relationship. Right. Go get therapy on your own. If you have 50% of the time, that's a lot of opportunities to get therapy. I would just be like, hey kid, we're going to go to therapy every Thursday until this is worked out. I don't need to bring in the government to have the government say, oh yeah, there's alienation. And parents are constantly trying to prove stuff that doesn't really need to be proven. Even like proving narcissism. I need to prove, oh my God, parents, Monica, I need to prove that X is a narcissist. How do I prove that? I'm like, why don't you just freaking focus on the fact, just get your time with your child. And if your child's messed up because the X is a narcissist, then go get therapy for your child independently without government help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We do a lot of that. We do a lot of self-correcting and trying to help people not self-sabotage themselves and fighting endless fights. Why take the bait? If they're a narcissist, they know how to get you. They've been doing it for years. They know how to fish for you. And it works.
Yeah, and the self-sabotage is actually it can generate a lot of revenue for the interested parties, like the therapists and the evaluators and the parenting coordinators and the attorneys for the children. And there's so much money to be made in when parents aren't able or willing to manage their own family independently. And again, that's the libertarian in me coming out. Again, secure equal time with your child. If you don't have equal time with your child, get that equal time. Even if you have to go to the Supreme Court, you can, worst case scenario, you could go from family court to the Supreme Court in your state in about 4 years. And that seems like a ridiculous amount of time. But so is proving narcissism and proving alienation, because you can only do that if you go to therapy with that person. So how many therapy sessions are needed to prove the narcissism? And then you have to depend on the therapist actually telling the truth,
Right.
And so that's 4 years. And I've done that. And I know this because I've done that. I've been in the system almost 12 years. I went to co-parenting therapy so that the therapist could write down a bunch of crap. So the therapist could tell the judge that my ex sucks. And then what? Will that give me my kid back? No.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And like with parental alienation, we discuss how it's very difficult, if not at all impossible, to diagnose. So you're going to be throwing money at psychiatrists for a long time, trying to get them to say what you want. And then the more, of course, then you're playing with egos of PhD holders, because then the more you buck up against them wanting to do something, the more they're going to, bring their God complex into it. And
and that's like paying. And I don't know why I thought it's like paying a plastic surgeon to look like Taylor Swift. It's like, if I give you 20 grand, will I look like Taylor Swift? Well, I'll try, we'll try to do this, but I can't guarantee. You can't guarantee. Again, there's just so many variables that have to click into place. And if this worked, then why don't we all have our kids back by now? This has been going on for 50 years. Alienation was a thing when I was a kid.
Yeah, as you went through, you lived through it.
When I was in junior high school, my best friend and I would take turns walking by her father's business and flipping him off, because that's how alienated she was to him.
Aww.
And we would both do that. I'm actually Facebook friends with him now. And my friend loves her dad to death. So we've all seen the light by now, but we used to hop on our bikes and be like, F you, this poor guy is making pizza, minding his own business. And he had to deal with these punk ass teenagers flipping him off. But this whole, that was around in the 80s. And so if all this worked, proving the narcissism and proving this and proving that, why don't we all have our kids back by now?
Right. Yeah.
So
it's an endless cycle. And at the end of the day, the children are missing out. They're the ones that aren't reaping the benefits of having two parents that are focusing solely on them. They're focusing on each other. And,
yes,
that's just not healthy. And that doesn't help the kids at all.
it's toxic. And the last person I want to focus on is my ex. I have no issue with my ex at this point. I've forgiven him for everything. I used to have to do meditations where I would have to forgive him for future F ups, like I forgive you for all the future bad things you're going to do. I have some questions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and I want you to answer because I think that you have so much like knowledge on this. Let me see. This person sent me a couple questions and I said, I'll definitely answer them. Let's see here. Where is she? And if you have a kickoff question, like what's like one of the more common questions you get in your practice?
In paralegal practice, regarding family law, I would say a very common question would be, everybody asks me like how to file a motion is pretty common. That's very common. So, without giving legal advice, I could say, like, if, for those who don't know, a motion is pretty much like asking the court something. You're asking them for something. You either want some kind of relief, you want something, or you want them to stop something, or you want them to postpone something. So there's a motion for all of it, and, I get that a lot. And unfortunately, in New York, paralegals can't give legal advice, and we can't like draft up like court documents asking for things. We can't participate in motion practice. So it gets a little hard to have those discussions with people when they ask me that all the time. But I can point you in the right direction, and I can tell you the name of the motion and like, oh, if you go on Google, look at this. And, so that's how I try to help in that case, because I get that question a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah. So the one question I got a couple of days ago was, do you have any experience with a parent that minimizes the child's need for medical attention, telling care providers that they're doing just fine, yada, yada, basically gaslighting the experience? So in other words, minimizing the child's symptoms. Say the child has anxiety, suicidal ideation. One parent saying, no, they're perfect. They're freaking singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow every time they come over. And at the other house, they're just messed up. So clearly that's a problem with the mom, the other parent. And then the parent reporting the issues looks like the crazy one. My short answer, and I'm sure you'll have a better answer than me. My short answer would be, well, so first of all, I believe that the medical provider has a duty to properly perform an intake. So if I'm a medical provider, I'm a licensed massage therapist. And if someone comes to me saying my ankle hurts, how do I do this correctly? Okay. If I get an underage child and one parent is saying she complains that her ankle hurts all the time, and the other parent is saying, no, she doesn't complain that her ankle hurts. As a licensed massage therapist, I have the professional expertise to have a conversation with the person and feel the ankle. Does it feel swollen? Does it feel, out of place? And draw my own conclusions. So I would say with this parent, and again, you probably have a better answer. I would say with this parent, let the provider do their job and just say your side, and who gives a crap about what your ex thinks. I find that with narcissism, no response is the best response. And
it's the best response. Absolutely.
Boring. Yeah. My ex thinks I'm the most boring person in the world. I know my ex is kicking himself saying, why the heck did I even want to be with her at all? She's so boring. She's like, how does anyone like her? Like, I know my ex thinks that I'm boring and useless because I present as such a buttoned up stoic, like I give him nothing, and he annoyed him for about 5 years, and now he just leaves me alone.
Sure.
So
sure.
Yeah, what would you say?
So in that regard, it's actually interesting because we actually personally went through something like this where mom was taking the kids to the doctors, and we actually paid and got both kids' medical records from birth till now. And I went through all of them. I like to read. And so I went through all of them. And it was interesting because as of last year, currently, she took him back to court to further lessen his time for no reason. Well, there was a reason, but it was just false allegations. And all of a sudden, this big thing about anxiety comes up in my oldest and the stepson. We're like, well, that's weird. Like, we don't see anxiety. We're not seeing these things. Like, Okay. So we got their medical records and I read through them all. And all the way up leading to the last doctor's appointment, which was the month of court started, there was no anxiety recorded in anywhere in the medical documents except for that doctor's appointment in the month that we went back to court.
Yeah.
So brought that into court. Next thing you know, the judge ruled that he has anxiety. Not a psychiatrist, not a doctor, nobody. The judge ruled that he has anxiety, and father doesn't care enough about it. Because, mind you, the father is a level 3 nurse.
Oh my God.
And the judge literally said, you don't care enough about his concerns of anxiety, and you need to show more of an interest in that. He has no diagnosis. If you want to talk about diagnosis, right?
Yeah,
so,
I call it bench diagnosis.
Yeah. I was like, what? I read that and I fell out of my chair. But so we do see the back and forth with the medical profession with children. It's very difficult. My best advice would be go to the medical appointments with your children. Okay. If you don't know where they are or when they are and you're not being told, you have every legal right, order or not, to call that doctor's office and get that appointment yourself, and or find out when the appointment is, and you show up there the day of.
My husband has literally called every emergency room in a 100-mile radius. Like, because if no one's telling you who these people are, call up everybody. It's going to take two or 3 or 4 or 5 days, but that's worth. Just say, hey, my child's name is so and so. Can I please have their records? And if you say, I don't know who you're talking about, then you can hang up and try again. But it's exhausting. But it's free.
But if
you're not paying somebody,
if they're not actively involved in you put yourself in that involvement and you place yourself there and you go and you do it. So that would be my best advice in that situation. But it does get a little hairy with the medical profession.
Yeah. And then the other question was, how do I ensure that the judge sees what a lying, manipulative father my daughter has and that she's intact? So again,
I don't mean to laugh at the question, but it's just I hear it a lot. Like you hear these questions a lot.
Yeah, and the thing is, we shouldn't be asking the judicial branch of government to assess personalities. They're there to apply law, not make assessments, and not. Maybe you know more than me. This is just my interpretation of law. I could be way off. Is it really the judge's job to pull in evidence that's not being presented adequately? Like, is it so? For example, if a parent lists a bunch of behaviors, is it the judge's job to classify those behaviors as something, or like put a label on it, or can the judge just say, well, those behaviors are crappy? I don't think judges should be doing assessments.
He can always give you a slap on the wrist for acting, being a bad actor. Unfortunately, here in New York, we have the best interest of the child.
Right.
And so they can take those descriptions of behaviors into effect when it comes to the best interest of the child, because it's like it's a character trait. And again, though, walk with caution, because if you're in court and all you're there for is to try to get another person who doesn't know you or know your spouse to think badly of the other person, you look bad. And
if you're going to do that, put it in your orders. Yeah, put it in your motion. Right. Plaintiff moves for this court to think this about the other person.
Right.
If that's what you want, ask for it in your relief request.
Court is no place for feelings. It's business. And, you have to. My attorney, when I was getting divorced, told me about my ex, because I was complaining, well, why isn't he doing this? And why isn't he doing that? He goes, Summer, you couldn't change him when you were married with him. He's not going to change now.
Yeah.
So I let it go.
Yeah, because crappy parenting, I have a course called The Best Interest of the Parent, and I think module 4, lesson 1, something like that. I actually have a whole slide in there that says stupid parenting is legal, lazy parenting is legal, and selfish parenting is legal. So if your ex is stupid, lazy, and selfish, providing that they're not doing anything that can be codified as child abuse, then they're just a-hole parents, according to you. Mm-hmm. Asshole parenting is legal. My mom was not a good parent. What am I going to do? Go back and sue her for not being a nice parent? There's bad coworkers, bad employees, bad neighbors. Mm-hmm. Being a bad person is not illegal, and it's not a government interest unless the person's being abused or, if there's a law. But yeah, the third part of the question was, it was my child's not getting the care they need. So again, that's really on the provider. If the parent has their full medical decision-making authority, and I believe both parents should have that adequately upheld and recognized and protected in the system. Divorce doesn't mean you lose your right to do any of those things, unless you can prove the other parent unfit, of course. And but I would put it on the clinician to do the treatment according to their scope and their ethics, because these people do have standards to adhere to, unlike judges.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, they do.
Yeah, so there's that. I hope I answered this question for this mom, who was wonderful to reach out and ask. And the other, so here's a question. So I just want to throw this in. So Ron and Sherry Palmer are constitutional scholars out of Texas. I don't know if you've heard of fixedfamilycourts.com.
I love constitutional scholars.
Yeah, no, they're so brilliant. They crack me open. And so one thing they say is that when a judge makes a best interest of the child determination, they're carrying out an executive function, because the standard for best interest, it changes from judge to judge. So, Judge Nelson will have one standard of best interest, another judge will have a different standard. So a parent can't possibly know what that standard is until after the fact. When you get your custody orders that say you lost your child, that's when you find out what the best interest is or was.
Right.
Right. So you learn
what
about
factors they took into play.
Yeah. And so for me, one thing I took to this Connecticut Supreme Court was, I said, if I'm doing something wrong, I need to know about it as I'm doing it. The fact that I got a bad GPA in college, which was one of the reasons I lost my son, I got that bad GPA before my son was even conceived. So someone should have told me when I was 24 years old getting a bad GPA, hey, you're going to lose your child for this. You better get your act together. And so I said in my petition, I said, a person has to know what they're doing wrong while they're doing it, because parenting is a fundamental right. And my rights were diminished by a government agency, which is the judge, or, the court, because of things I did. And so Ron Palmer says that's ex post facto punishment. And judges will punish a parent for stuff they did in the marriage that was by consent. So like my husband sucks at laundry, say, right? Sucks at laundry, doesn't freaking put enough soap in, and the kids have dirty clothes, something stupid, right? If I go and complain about that in 5 years, a judge could theoretically take my husband away from my daughters because he did laundry badly. And that's the kind of stuff that's happening, is like judges are punishing parents for stuff they did in the marriage that's illegal.
Right.
And the other parent didn't file any complaints at the time. They didn't call CPS and say, oh my God, my kids are filthy. None of that. They just bitched about it 5 years later to their lawyer, and the lawyer made it a thing. So in my case, like, I lost my son for not having a good GPA, for going to school when he was little, and like that's not respectful, whatever. Like, and so if I had known that going to school would make me lose him, I wouldn't have not have gone to school.
Right.
And
absolutely.
And so when we ask the judge to carry out a function like determining the best interest, you can't know what that is until after the fact. When you get your 20-page orders, that's when you find out. And then you can't go back and rehabilitate yourself because you've already lost your child. And so what Ron and Sherry Palmer say is the best interest of the child is an executive function of government. And so it should be there should be an independent agency solely designed to determine best interest of the child. And if the parent, and that is applicable to all parents and kids, even if you're married or whatever. And I might be butchering it, but it's so fascinating the way to describe it. But they say, like, the standard has to apply equally. And then that way, when a judge makes a determination, it's neutral. It's like more neutral. They're not the ones creating the philosophy of what's best for the child. And so I think parents need to stop asking for a best interest determination and petition for motion, not motion for determining best interest, but motion to recognize, uphold, and protect the rights that I already have.
No, and we have a big issue with the best interest of the child here in New York. Like you said, it's inconsistent across the board. So you can have two judges right next to each other, and with similar facts in their case, and they rule different. And so, in my big thing in public policy, if there's no way to measure something, then it's not good policy. Like, you have to be able to measure it against, like you said, a standard, something. There's no way to measure this.
Yeah, it's like a stop sign that's kind of like invisible sometimes at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not really there. And then sometimes it's in a different language. And then sometimes it's like tipped over. So like a stop sign should always mean the same thing as that you stop. If it's kind of blurry, then you have to know, like people have to know what laws they're breaking basically. And I wrote that in my petition to the Supreme Court. And the problem with this whole bullshit system is that they say, well, it's civil court, it doesn't apply. It's like, why do I have fewer rights in civil court than I do in criminal court?
That's a whole nother show right there.
We're going to book you for July something now for that. Yeah. But I'll just say one more thing, and I want you to absolutely have the closing remarks here. But there's one more thing I wanted to say, and I think parents could relate to this, and probably you too. I just lost it. It was good. Oh, yeah. So when I did my oral argument, and I did all this pro se, oh my God. I think the best possible thing parents could do, and I hope I don't bastardize your whole industry, but do go pro se and hire an attorney like a la carte, like consult with an attorney a couple hours here, a couple hours there, give them their stuff to look over. I don't know if that's a thing. I think that's brilliant. That's what we do in my family. We do all the work ourselves. My husband has his own 16-year case. And I have my 11-year case, and we do all the legal work ourselves, but we will present stuff to attorneys and pay them like, $500 to like look stuff over. And we find that works brilliantly, and it keeps us accountable for our lives, and it saves money. And but what I will say is, when I was doing my oral argument in the appellate court, I said a parent who abused their child and was substantiated for abuse has a better outcome, has a better chance at reunifying with their child than a parent who lost their child in a divorce on a best interest standard, because I have no ability. I can't rehabilitate from my issues. I can't rehabilitate getting a crappy GPA in 2003. And so if I had driven drunk and gotten my, no heat or running water in my house, I have 15 to 22 months to rehabilitate my issues in the CPS statutes. In Connecticut, you have 15 months to get your crap together, and then you get your kids back. So I actually said that. I said, I wish I had just abused my son so that I could get him back, but that was kind of me just sticking a.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I could talk forever on this, but yeah. So do you want to close off with anything for the people about, mainly like more about what you do with your nonprofit?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great opening conversation. Like you said, there's so much. It's so complex, and our New York Families for Tomorrow, we really try to educate parents. We want them to stay out of court. We want them to advocate for themselves and for their kids. Again, the pro se advocacy. Then there's the legal advocacy part of it, and and the parental alienation is also there. And it may not look like it's moving anywhere here in New York, but when you're dealing with medical diagnoses and terms and PhD holders, it can get very hard to get everyone on the same page to pass a bill. Everybody's like, oh, well, we want to see a parental alienation bill. Well, so do I. But it's a work of art. And it takes years to get things passed here in New York. It really does. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And so, to the parents out there, just continue reaching out and talking to each other and listening to people like Monica, and just keep researching. And like you said, Monica, I love it. You do all your own legal work. That's great. Don't be intimidated of legal work. It's a lot of resources are online, and you can, again, ask a paralegal. You can, a lot of attorneys offer free consults. You can talk to them. You can go, every American citizen has a right to the legal library at their local state courthouse. You can walk right in there and reference and use anything in that legal library. And so just be confident and do some research and know that, you have the right to represent yourself. And if you lead with your heart and you're talking about your children, and you keep it civil and you keep it clean, I think anyone has a good shot at coming out the other side, healthy and in one piece, hopefully.
Yeah, and about the legal library and research, a lot of parents will do it for 20 minutes and they'll get so fatigued that they quit forever. But
Yeah.
the first time I remember going to Spain and walking around and everything was just and I was like, I don't know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in a Hispanic household and I still couldn't figure anything out. By the time I was there for 2 weeks, I was dreaming in Spanish. And we just have you guys have to have stamina
Mm-hmm.
and take care of your health so that you can go through that boring, grueling work. People like Summer go to school for this because they love it, obviously. But if you're a hairdresser, you're going to think this is boring. And then parents will feel bad about themselves for not understanding it after an hour. You're never going to understand it in an hour. If you get 5% of what you're reading, you're doing great. But if you see the word de novo 20 times, the 21st time, you're gonna be like, oh my God, I know what de novo means.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great. And it's so freaking incredible when you know what you're reading after a while.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you're picking up new skills anyways, so you're just naturally improving yourself.
Absolutely.
It may be in a negative situation, but you're still improving yourself and you're still moving forward. So that's important in all cases of divorce, separation, or trying to get your child back. You got to move forward and just keep improving and keep going.
Yes, I have a podcast episode. I think it's like episode 8 that talks about that. It's incredible. We'll definitely have you back on, maybe like a whole topic just on how to get through that grueling, boring work.
And I'm also real quick. If you go to New York Families for Tomorrow Facebook page, under events, I am in July holding a part 1 of court appearance class.
Wow.
So anybody, it's free to join for anybody. I said New York residents mostly, but out-of-state residents can join. It just might be a little different court structure for them because we're here in New York. So, but yeah, it's an event and it's free for anybody to attend, and I'll be hosting it. It's a 2-hour class where we start going through the court appearance process, how it's structured, how to ask for things, stuff like that. So feel free to check that out and
oh my gosh,
and go if you like.
Yeah, is it I'm trying to find the event itself. Oh, July 22nd?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Is it like a Zoom call?
Yeah, so it's going to be either Zoom or Microsoft Teams.
Wow, that's incredible. Absolutely. And it's okay if it's not your state, you're going to learn stuff anyway.
Like I said, it's only like the court structure is just going to be a little different, where you say Supreme Court is the highest court in your state. Ours is Court of Appeals, stuff like that. Just little things.
Dialects.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. That's a great note to end on, because I always like to end on something positive. Yes, and there is a way out of this. I know for a fact the system's going to overturn everything. Generation X and Y will be the people that do this, because our kids are not going through this. No, I am not going to be an alienated grandmother. Hell to the no. I will kick some ass. So yeah, I so appreciate you coming on. So we'll see you back here in 2 weeks on the 29th.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yes. Thank you so much, Summer. We're so thrilled to have you on.
All right. Thank you for having me. Have a good night, guys.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.